The wind came wrong that morning. Mara noticed it before she opened her eyes, the way it rattled the bedroom shutters with a rhythm that felt almost deliberate, almost angry. She'd grown up on this land, knew its moods the way some women knew their children's faces, and something about the air tasted metallic, dangerous. She sat up in bed, reaching instinctively for the empty space beside her where Thomas should have been. 3 weeks. It had been 3 weeks since they'd buried him and Daniel, and her hand still searched for warmth that would never return. The ranch house creaked around her, settling into the October cold. Through the window, she could see the skeleton of the barn, blackened timber beams jutting toward the sky like broken ribs. The fire marshal from Copper Falls had called it an accident. Lantern oil, he'd said. Happens all the time with ranchers who work late. Mara had nodded, thanked him for coming all that way, and watched him ride off without once mentioning the boot prints she'd found in the ash. Size 12? Maybe 13. Thomas wore a 9. Daniel was 8 years old. She dressed slowly, pulling on the same black wool dress she'd worn to the funeral. It was starting to smell like sweat and grief, but she only owned 3 dresses, and the others felt wrong somehow, too colorful, too alive. Her reflection in the cracked mirror showed a woman she barely recognized. 32 years old, but the face staring back looked carved from something harder than flesh. Hollow cheeks, eyes that had forgotten how to close all the way. The ranch spread out before her like an accusation. 200 acres of scrubland and sage carved out of nothing by Thomas's father 40 years ago. They'd raised cattle here, good stock, until the Rourke gang started running protection schemes through the valley. Pay up or lose your herd, that was the deal. Thomas had paid for 2 years, watching their savings evaporate, before he'd finally said no. The barn burned 4 days later. Mara walked across the yard, her boots crunching on frost-hard ground. The chicken coop was empty. Something had gotten in during the night and slaughtered every bird, not for food but for sport. Feathers everywhere, blood splashed across the wire mesh. She stood there for a long moment, staring at the carnage, feeling nothing. That was the strangest part. 3 weeks ago, this would have broken her. Now it just felt like more evidence for a trial that would never happen. Mrs. Calloway? She turned to find Samuel Preston standing at the edge of her property, hat in his hands. Sam owned the feed store in town, had known Thomas since they were boys. Good man, scared man. Sam, brought you some supplies. He gestured to a small wagon parked on the road, loaded with sacks of flour and beans. Folks in town took up a collection, figured you might need. I can pay. I know you can. Sam's face colored. That's not. We just wanted to help. Mara softened slightly. I appreciate it. Really, but I don't need charity. Mara. Sam stepped closer, lowering his voice even though they were alone. You need to leave this place. Sell what's left and go stay with your sister in Kansas City. The Rourkes murdered my family. The words hung between them like smoke. Sam flinched, glanced over his shoulder at the empty road. You can't say things like that. Why not? It's true. True or not, it'll get you killed. Sam crushed his hat between his hands. Gideon Rourke owns this valley now. The sheriff, the judge, half the businesses in town, they're all on his payroll. You think anyone's going to stand up for you? I'm not asking anyone to stand up for me. Mara crossed her arms. I'm asking them to stop pretending they don't see what's happening. Pretending keeps us alive. Does it? How many ranches have burned, Sam? How many people have disappeared? You're not alive. You're just not dead yet. Sam opened his mouth, closed it. Finally, he set his hat back on his head and climbed into the wagon. Supplies are yours whether you want them or not. I'll leave them by the road. Mara watched him drive away, dust trailing behind the wagon like a funeral shroud. She knew she'd been too harsh. Sam was just trying to help in the only way he could, small gestures, quiet kindness, nothing that would draw attention. That was how people survived in Black Viper Ridge. They kept their heads down and hoped the wolves would pass them by. She walked back to the house and found a note nailed to the door. 30 days. Then we take it. No signature. Didn't need one. Mara pulled the note free and carried it inside, adding it to the collection on the kitchen table. 7 notes in 3 weeks, each one more explicit than the last. The sheriff had glanced at them when she'd brought them in, then suggested maybe she was stressed, seeing threats where there were none. Grief could do that to a person, he'd said. She'd left his office without another word. The afternoon burned away. Mara spent it trying to salvage what she could from the barn. Tools, mostly. Anything metal that had survived the fire. Her hands blistered and bled, but the pain felt good. Proof she was still here, still fighting. Around 4 o'clock, she noticed the dust. A single rider, coming up the eastern trail. Mara dropped the shovel she'd been using and ran for the house. Thomas's rifle hung above the fireplace. A Winchester 73, well-maintained, loaded. She grabbed it and positioned herself by the window, watching the rider approach. He was big. She could see that even from a distance. Tall in the saddle, broad-shouldered, moving with the kind of easy confidence that came from spending more time on horseback than on foot. As he got closer, she noticed other details. Dark coat, worn but well-made. Wide-brimmed hat pulled low. And something else. The way he rode, scanning the horizon constantly, one hand never far from the revolver at his hip. This wasn't a neighbor come to pay respects. The rider stopped 50 yards from the house and raised both hands, palms out. "Don't want trouble," he called. His voice was rough, like gravel scraped over iron. "Just looking for water and maybe shelter from the storm." Mara glanced at the sky. Clear blue, not a cloud in sight. "What storm?" The stranger pointed west. Mara followed his gesture and felt her stomach drop. A wall of darkness was building on the horizon. A dust storm, massive and fast-moving. She'd seen them before, knew how they could tear across the plains and turn day into night. This one looked bad. "You've got maybe an hour," the stranger said. "Less if the wind picks up." Mara kept the rifle trained on him. "There's a town 10 miles south. Try there. Won't make it in time." He lowered his hands slowly. "I'm not asking for much. Let me stable my horse in what's left of your barn, wait out the storm. I'll be gone by morning." "How do I know you're not with the Rourkes?" Something changed in the stranger's posture. Subtle, but she caught it. A tension in his shoulders, a shift in how he held the reins. "The Rourkes," he said carefully, "wouldn't ask permission." It was true. Mara studied him for another long moment, weighing risks. On one hand, letting a stranger onto her property during a dust storm was dangerous. On the other hand, turning him away was basically a death sentence, and she'd had enough death for one lifetime. "Stable's around back," she finally said. "There's a pump by the water trough. Don't come near the house." The stranger nodded once and guided his horse toward the barn. Mara watched him go, rifle still ready, trying to ignore the small voice in her head that said she'd just made a terrible mistake. The storm hit 40 minutes later. It came like a living thing, roaring across the valley with a sound like 1,000 trains. The sky turned the color of an old bruise, and then there was nothing but wind and dust and darkness. Mara sealed the windows and doors as best she could, stuffing rags into every crack, but the dust still found its way inside. It coated everything, got into her lungs, made her eyes water. She sat at the kitchen table with the rifle across her lap and waited. The storm screamed for hours. Somewhere outside, something metal was being torn loose. Maybe the chicken coop fence, maybe part of the roof. Mara didn't care. Let it all blow away. Let the whole ranch scatter across the plains like ash. Around midnight, she heard footsteps on the porch. Mara raised the rifle, finger on the trigger. The door handle turned slowly, and then the stranger was there, backlit by lightning, dust swirling around him like smoke. "Get out," Mara said. "Your roof's coming loose." The stranger didn't move. "Southwest corner, if it goes, the whole structure might collapse." "That's my problem." "It is." He met her eyes, and she saw something unexpected there. Not threat, but exhaustion. "But I'm offering to fix it if you've got rope and nails." "In the middle of a dust storm? Better than waiting for it to cave in on your head." Mara wanted to refuse. Every instinct told her not to trust this man, not to let him get any closer. But he was right about the roof. She could hear it groaning, feel the house shuddering with each gust of wind. "Rope's in the cellar," she said. "Nails in the shed if it's still standing." The stranger nodded and disappeared back into the storm. Mara stayed by the window, watching his shadow move across the yard. He worked fast and sure, like someone who'd done emergency repairs in bad weather before. Military, maybe. Or just someone who'd lived hard and learned to adapt. An hour later, the groaning stopped. The house settled. The stranger returned to the barn without a word. Mara sat in the dark and tried to figure out what she'd just witnessed. Charity didn't exist out here. People didn't help strangers without expecting something in return. So what did he want? She didn't sleep that night, just sat with the rifle and listened to the storm slowly die. Dawn came pale and dusty. Mara emerged from the house to find the yard transformed. Dust had piled against the walls like snowdrifts. The chicken coop fence was gone, scattered across the plains. But the house stood, and when she looked up at the roof, she saw fresh rope securing the loose corner. The barn was empty. The stranger and his horse were gone. Mara walked the property, checking for damage. Most of it was cosmetic, dust and debris, things that could be swept away. But then she reached the well pump and stopped. It was fixed. The pump had been broken for weeks, seized up from lack of maintenance. Thomas had meant to fix it, but then Mara crouched down and examined the mechanism. Someone had taken it apart, cleaned it, reassembled it. Fresh grease on the joints, new leather on the gasket. She worked the handle experimentally. Water flowed clear and cold. "What the hell?" Mara whispered. She spent the morning cleaning, trying to restore some order to the house. Around noon, she made coffee from Sam's donated supplies and stood on the porch, staring at the eastern trail where the stranger had appeared. Who was he? Why help her? And more importantly, would he come back? The answer came 3 days later. Mara was in town, buying supplies she couldn't afford, when she heard the commotion. Shouting from the saloon, the sound of glass breaking. She hurried toward the noise and found a crowd gathered outside, watching something through the windows. "What's happening?" she asked a woman standing nearby. "Stranger picked a fight with Cole Rourke," the woman said. "Fool's about to get himself killed." Mara pushed through the crowd. Inside the saloon, tables were overturned, chairs broken. And in the center of the chaos stood the stranger from the storm, facing down a man she recognized immediately. Cole Rourke, Gideon's younger brother, meaner if that was possible. "You don't know who you're dealing with," Cole was saying. He was drunk, swaying slightly, but his hand rested on the pistol at his hip. "This is Rourke territory." The stranger said nothing, just stood there, calm and still. "I said," Cole started. "I heard you." The stranger's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "And I don't care." The saloon went silent. Nobody talked to a Rourke like that. Not if they wanted to live. Cole's face went red. "You got a death wish?" "Maybe." The stranger tilted his head slightly. "But if I do, you won't be the one to grant it." Cole drew his pistol, or tried to. The stranger moved faster than Mara's eyes could follow. One moment he was standing still, the next he had Cole's wrist locked in his grip, the gun pointed harmlessly at the floor. He squeezed, and Cole screamed. The pistol fell to the sawdust. "Walk away," the stranger said quietly. Cole clutched his wrist, tears of pain and rage streaming down his face. "You're dead. You hear me? Dead!" He stumbled toward the door, shouldering past Mara without seeing her. His men followed, casting nervous glances at the stranger. The crowd dispersed slowly, people whispering, already building the story into legend. Mara stayed where she was, watching the stranger pick up Cole's dropped pistol, unload it, and set it on the bar. "You," she said. He turned, and something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe, or regret. "Mrs. Calloway." "You know my name." "Small town. People talk." Mara stepped closer. "You just made an enemy of the most dangerous family in 3 territories. Why?" The stranger shrugged. "He was cheating at cards." "That's it? You risk your life over a card game?" "I don't like cheaters." They stared at each other for a long moment. Up close, Mara could see the scars, dozens of them, crisscrossing his hands and neck, disappearing under his collar. Old knife wounds, burns, what looked like a bullet graze above his left ear. This was a man who'd survived things most people couldn't imagine. "Thank you," Mara said, "for fixing the pump and the roof. You're welcome." "But I didn't ask you to, and I can't pay you." "Didn't ask for payment." "Then what do you want?" The stranger was quiet for a moment. Outside, horses were galloping, Cole Rourke riding hard, probably straight to his brother. The whole town would be talking by nightfall. This stranger had just painted a target on his back. Right now? He adjusted his hat. "I want to be gone before the rest of the Rourkes show up." Smart. Usually. He headed for the door, then paused. They're coming for you too, soon. I know. You planning to be ready? Mara thought about the rifle at home, the bullets she'd counted and recounted. 16 rounds, maybe enough to take down 3 or 4 men before they overwhelmed her. No, she admitted, probably not. The stranger nodded slowly, like she'd confirmed something he already knew. Then he walked out into the street, climbed onto his horse, and rode north toward the mountains. Mara stood in the empty saloon and wondered if she'd ever see him again. That night, she got her answer. The Rourkes came at sunset, 5 riders, led by Gideon himself. Mara saw them from the kitchen window and felt her heart start to race. This was it. The moment she'd been dreading and expecting in equal measure. She grabbed the rifle and stepped onto the porch. Gideon Rourke was a big man, barrel-chested and mean-eyed, with a beard that hadn't been trimmed in months. He sat his horse like a king surveying conquered territory. "Mrs. Calloway," he called. "We need to talk." "Nothing to talk about." "I disagree." Gideon swung down from his saddle, moved toward the porch. His men fanned out, surrounding the house. "See, my brother tells me you're keeping company with a stranger, dangerous stranger, the kind that might give a widow ideas." "I don't know what you're talking about." "No?" Gideon smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "That's interesting, because this stranger, this man nobody knows, he humiliated my brother in front of the whole town, made him look weak. And we can't have that, can we?" Mara raised the rifle. "Get off my property." "Your property?" Gideon laughed. "That's cute. This land's been mine since your husband decided to stop paying what he owed. I've just been letting you stay here out of kindness." "Kindness." Mara's voice shook with rage. "You murdered my family." "Careful now." Gideon's smile vanished. "That's a serious accusation. You got proof?" "I know what I know." "What you know," Gideon said slowly, "is that accidents happen. Barns burn. People die. That's frontier life." He took another step forward. "But here's what I'm willing to do, out of respect for your loss. You sign over the deed to this land, and I'll give you enough money to start over somewhere else. Somewhere safe. No? No? This land belonged to Thomas's family for 40 years. I'm not giving it to you." Gideon sighed. "Then I'm afraid you're making a mistake, Mrs. Calloway. See, I've been patient, more patient than most men would be, but my patience has limits." He gestured to one of his men, who pulled out a torch, already lit, flame dancing in the evening breeze. "Last chance," Gideon said. "Sign or we burn what's left." Mara's finger tightened on the trigger. She could shoot Gideon right now, end this. But his men would kill her before his body hit the ground, and then it would all be over. The ranch, her life, everything. "Wait." The voice came from behind the barn. Everyone turned, and there, walking out of the shadows like he'd been there all along, was the stranger. Gideon's eyes narrowed. "You. Me." The stranger stopped 20 feet from the nearest rider. His hands hung loose at his sides, but Mara could see the tension in his posture. He was ready for violence. "You got business here?" Gideon asked. "Maybe." "This doesn't concern you." "Seems like it does." Gideon studied him for a long moment. "You know who I am?" Gideon Rourke, born in Texas, wanted in 4 territories for murder, robbery, extortion, arson. Should I keep going? The air went electric. Gideon's men reached for their weapons, but Gideon held up a hand, stopping them. "Wanted," he said carefully. "By who?" "Does it matter?" "It might." The stranger smiled then, cold and empty. "Tell you what. You and your boys ride out of here, leave Mrs. Calloway alone, and maybe I'll forget I saw you." "Forget?" Gideon laughed. "That's generous. But I think you're bluffing. One man can't stop all of us." "Want to find out?" The silence stretched. Mara barely breathed, watching the standoff, knowing it could explode into violence at any second. Gideon was calculating, weighing odds. 5 armed men against 1 stranger. Easy math. But something held him back. Something in the stranger's eyes, maybe. Or the way he stood, completely relaxed despite being outnumbered. Like he'd been in situations like this before and walked away. Finally, Gideon laughed again, but it sounded forced. "You're not worth it," he said. "Not today." He turned to Mara. "But you, widow, you think about my offer, because next time I won't be so polite." He mounted his horse and wheeled it around, riding off with his men. The torches went with them, flames disappearing into the dusk. Mara lowered the rifle. Her hands were shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. "You should have killed him," the stranger said. "With what? 1 bullet against 5 men? Fair point." He walked toward the porch. "You all right?" "No." Mara laughed bitterly. "But I'm alive, so that's something." "It is." They stood there in the gathering darkness, two strangers bound together by violence neither of them wanted but both understood. "Why did you come back?" Mara asked. The stranger was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. "Because I've seen this story before, seen how it ends, and I'm tired of watching good people die while bad people take everything. You can't stop them, not alone." "Maybe not." He met her eyes. "But I can try." Mara wanted to tell him to leave, to save himself before Gideon came back with more men, but the words stuck in her throat, because the truth was she needed help, needed it desperately, and this stranger, whoever he was, might be her only chance. "I can't pay you," she said again, still not asking. "Then what do you want?" The stranger looked out at the horizon where the last light was fading. "A place to stop running," he said quietly, "even if it's just for a little while." Mara understood that. The bone-deep exhaustion of fighting every day, of carrying grief and rage with nowhere to put it down. "There's a room in the barn," she said. "Not much, but it's dry." "That'll do." He started to walk away, then paused. "What's your name?" Mara called after him. The stranger looked back. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "People call me Ronan." "People? Not you?" "I've had a lot of names." "Which one's real?" Ronan smiled, sad and distant. "I've forgotten." He disappeared into the barn, leaving Mara alone on the porch. Above, stars were beginning to emerge, cold and indifferent. In the distance, she could hear coyotes calling to each other, wild and free. Mara went inside, locked the door, and sat at the kitchen table with Thomas's rifle across her lap. Tomorrow, she'd have to make a decision. Trust this stranger completely, or send him away and face the Rourkes alone. But tonight, for the first time in 3 weeks, she didn't feel quite so alone. And in the darkness of the barn, Ronan Vale sat cleaning his guns, thinking about the federal warrant in his saddlebag, and the man whose face was printed on it. Gideon Rourke, the last target, the one that mattered. He'd tracked the Rourke gang for 2 years, across deserts and mountains, through towns that had surrendered to fear. He'd lost partners, friends, everything that made him human. And now, finally, he was close. But something had changed when he saw Mara Calloway standing on that porch, rifle in hand, refusing to bow. Something shifted inside him, some part he thought had died long ago. She was going to get herself killed. He knew that. The Rourkes didn't make empty threats, unless someone stopped them first. Ronan holstered his pistols and lay back on the straw, staring at the barn roof he'd repaired during the storm. Outside, the night wind whispered through the sage. Inside, he made a decision that would change both their lives. He wasn't running anymore. Not from this fight. Morning came with frost on the ground and smoke rising from the barn. Mara woke to the smell of coffee. Real coffee. Not the chicory substitute she'd been stretching for weeks. She pulled on her boots and grabbed the rifle out of habit, then stopped herself. If Ronan wanted her dead, he'd had plenty of chances. She found him outside, crouched by a small fire, a battered tin pot balanced on stones. He looked up as she approached but didn't speak. "That's my coffee," Mara said. "I'll replace it." "With what money?" Ronan poured a cup and held it out. "Consider it payment for the roof space." The coffee was strong and hot, better than anything she'd made in months. Mara drank it slowly, watching him over the rim. In daylight, she could see more details. The scars weren't just on his hands and neck, they ran up his forearms, disappearing under rolled sleeves. His knuckles were thick with old breaks, and his eyes, gray as winter sky, never stopped moving, checking the horizon, the tree line, the road. "You always this jumpy?" she asked. "Keeps me alive." "Must be exhausting." "It is." He poured himself a cup. But it beats the alternative. They drank in silence. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster crowed. Someone else's ranch. Someone whose chickens hadn't been slaughtered for sport. The sound made Mara's chest tight. "I need to bury them," she said quietly. Ronan didn't ask who. "Where?" "There's a spot on the North Ridge. Thomas always liked the view." "I'll help." "You don't have to." "I know." They spent the morning digging. The ground was hard, resistant, fighting them for every inch. Mara's hands blistered and bled, but she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. These were her chickens, her responsibility. The fact that someone else had killed them didn't change that. Ronan worked without complaint, his movements efficient and practiced. He'd dug graves before. She could tell by the way he measured depth, tested soil. After 2 hours, they had a hole deep enough. "You want to say anything?" Ronan asked. Mara looked at the pile of feathered bodies wrapped in burlap. "Like what?" "I don't know. Some people find it helps." "You religious?" "No." "Me neither. Not anymore." Mara kicked dirt into the hole. "Thomas was, though. Used to pray every night. Thank you for this, thank you for that. After the fire, people kept telling me he was in a better place." She laughed bitterly. "A better place. Like there's anywhere better than home with your family." Ronan was quiet. They filled the grave together, packing the earth down firm. When they finished, Mara stood there for a long moment, staring at the fresh dirt. "They were just chickens," she said. "Doesn't matter." "No," Mara agreed. "It doesn't." They walked back to the ranch in silence. The sun was high now, burning off the morning chill. Mara could see the full extent of storm damage in daylight. Shingles missing from the house, fence posts knocked over, tools scattered across the yard. Months of work, maybe years. And that was assuming the Rourkes gave her months. "What's your plan?" Ronan asked. "My plan? Gideon's coming back, you know that." "I know." Mara picked up a fallen fence post. "But this is my land, I'm not leaving." "Admirable? Also stupid." She turned on him. "You got a better idea?" "Several." Ronan scanned the property with those restless eyes. "But they all require you to be realistic about your situation." "Which is?" "You're one woman with one rifle and about 16 bullets. Gideon Rourke runs a gang of 20, maybe 30 men. They're experienced killers who've been terrorizing this valley for years. The law won't help you, the town won't help you, and if you try to fight them alone, you'll die. Probably slow." Mara's jaw tightened. "You finished?" "Not quite." Ronan walked to the barn, returned with a piece of charred wood. He drew in the dirt, the ranch house, the barn, the surrounding terrain. "Your property is exposed on 3 sides. No natural cover, no defensible positions. If they come during the day, you won't see them until they're already here. At night, they could burn you out without even dismounting." "So what, I just give up, sign over my land, and walk away?" "I didn't say that." "Then what are you saying?" Ronan looked at her for a long moment. "I'm saying if you're going to fight, you need to fight smart. Use the land, set traps, make them pay for every inch." "You mean an ambush?" "I mean defense. There's a difference." Mara stared at the sketch in the dirt. "You've done this before." "Yes." "Where?" Ronan erased the drawing with his boot. "Doesn't matter. Point is, you asked for a better idea. I'm giving you one." "Why?" "You don't owe me anything. Maybe I'm tired of watching people like Gideon Rourke take whatever they want. Or maybe you're running from something and this is a convenient place to hide." Ronan smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Could be both. They spent the afternoon walking the property. Ronan pointed out weak spots, places where riders could approach unseen. He showed her how to read the land, use elevation and sight lines. It was like learning a new language, one spoken in angles and distances. "Here," Ronan said, stopping at a narrow ravine on the eastern border. "You could string wire across, knee-high. Fast-moving horses wouldn't see it until too late." "That's cruel." "That's survival. You want fair, join a church social." Mara flinched. "I told you, I'm not—" "I know. Sorry." Ronan rubbed his face. "Point is, the Rourkes won't fight fair. Neither should you." They continued the survey. Ronan found a dozen places where simple preparations could make a difference. Tripwires, pit traps, hidden firing positions. Nothing elaborate, just practical solutions to impossible odds. You really think this will work? Mara asked. No, Ronan said honestly. But it'll give you a chance. Sometimes that's all you get. That evening, they started work. Ronan showed Mara how to dig a proper pit trap, deep enough to break a horse's leg, covered with branches and dirt. It was brutal work, made worse by the knowledge of what it would do. But Mara thought about Daniel's small body in the burned barn, and her hands didn't shake. You got family? Ronan asked, breaking hours of silence. Had a sister. She died in childbirth 5 years ago. I'm sorry. You say that a lot. I mean it a lot. Ronan tested the trap's cover, making sure it would hold a man's weight, but not a horse's. What about your parents? Dead, cholera epidemic when I was 16. Thomas's family raised me after that. Mara wiped sweat from her forehead. You? No one. Everyone comes from someone. Not everyone stays in touch. The way he said it made clear the subject was closed. They worked until dark, then ate a sparse dinner of beans and hardtack. Mara found herself studying him across the fire, the way he ate mechanically, without pleasure, the way he sat with his back to the barn wall, eyes on the road. How long are you planning to stay? She asked. Long enough. For what? Ronan didn't answer. He stood, stretched, and walked to the barn. Mara watched him go, frustration building. He was helping her, yes, but on his terms. No explanations, no real trust, just enough cooperation to keep things moving. She cleaned up and went inside, locking the door behind her. Through the window, she could see lamplight in the barn. What was he doing out there? Reading? Cleaning weapons? Planning his next move? Sleep came hard. Every sound made her reach for the rifle. Around midnight, she gave up and made coffee, sitting at the kitchen table in the dark. The house creaked and settled, full of memories that hurt to touch. Thomas had built this table, carved it from oak he'd hauled from the mountains. Daniel had done his schoolwork here, tongue poking out as he practiced his letters. Mara ran her fingers over the wood, finding the spot where Daniel had scratched his name with a nail when he was 5. She'd been so angry. Now she'd give anything to scold him again. A knock at the door made her jump. It's me, Ronan called. Mara opened the door, rifle ready. What? Saw your light. Thought you might be in trouble. Just can't sleep. Ronan nodded. The first few months are the hardest. You lost someone. It wasn't a question. Ronan's face went carefully blank. Everyone loses someone eventually. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. He turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, it does get easier. Not better, but easier. How? You stop expecting them to walk through the door. Stop setting out 2 plates instead of 1. Your brain accepts what your heart won't. He looked at her then, really looked, and she saw old pain in those gray eyes. But you never stop missing them. That part stays forever. Before Mara could respond, he was gone, swallowed by the darkness. The next 3 days fell into a rhythm. Wake at dawn, work the traps, eat sparingly, sleep poorly. Ronan taught her things she'd never imagined needing to know. How to move quietly, how to shoot from prone position, how to read tracks in soft dirt. He was patient but demanding, pushing her past exhaustion. Again, he said, watching her reload the Winchester. I've done it 20 times. And when the Rourkes come, you'll need to do it in the dark, with your hands shaking while bullets are flying past your head. So again. Mara reloaded, fumbling the first cartridge. Ronan made her start over and over until she could do it blind by feel alone. Why are you so good at this? She asked during a water break. Practice. That's not an answer either. Ronan checked the sun's position. I was a soldier, long time ago. Which war? All of them. He stood, brushed off his pants. Come on. Want to show you something else? He led her to the western fence line, where the property bordered a steep slope. If they come from this direction, they'll be moving uphill. Horses will be tired. You set up here. He pointed to a cluster of rocks. You've got clear shots and cover. You've thought about every approach. That's the job. What job? You never told me what you do. Ronan was quiet for a long moment. I find people who don't want to be found. Sometimes I bring them in. Sometimes I don't. Bounty hunter. Something like that. Mara studied his face. Gideon Rourke. You're hunting him. What makes you say that? The way you looked at him. The things you knew. You're not here by accident. Ronan met her eyes. No, I'm not. So all this, helping me, the traps, the training, it's just to get to him. It started that way. And now? Now I don't know. Ronan picked up a rock, turned it over in his hand. I've been tracking the Rourkes for 2 years. Watched them destroy a dozen ranches, kill maybe 50 people. Every time I got close, they moved on. Different town, same pattern. He threw the rock, watching it tumble down the slope. Then I found out Gideon was here, and I rode in thinking I'd finish it, quick and clean. What changed? You. He said it simply, without romance. You're going to get yourself killed over this land, and I've seen too many people die for nothing. My family isn't nothing. I didn't mean it like that. Ronan ran a hand through his hair. Look, the truth is, I could have killed Gideon a dozen times by now. Caught him alone, put a bullet in his head, collected the bounty. But that won't stop his brothers, won't stop the gang. They'll just find a new leader and keep going. So what will stop them? Making an example, showing the whole territory that the Rourkes aren't untouchable. He looked at the ranch, the traps they'd built, the preparations they'd made. If we can hold them off, break them here, word will spread. Other towns will find their courage. And if we can't, then at least we tried. It was the most honest thing he'd said since arriving. Mara appreciated that, even if the honesty was terrifying. That night, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She stood at the window, scanning the darkness, seeing nothing but feeling everything. Around 10 o'clock, Ronan appeared beside her. You feel it too, he said. Feel what? They're out there, watching. Mara's hand found the rifle. How do you know? Experience. And this. He pointed to the tree line, where she could just barely make out a shape that didn't belong. Too regular, too still. Ryder. Been there for about an hour. Why haven't they attacked? Counting, learning our patterns. Gideon's smarter than his brother. He won't come until he knows he can win. So what do? We wait, and we don't let them see us sweat. The shape in the tree line stayed until just before dawn, then vanished. Mara didn't sleep at all. She watched Ronan instead, noticing how he never fully relaxed. Even sitting, he looked ready to move, ready to fight. You ever get tired? She asked as the sun came up. Every day. Then why keep going? Ronan poured coffee, his movements slow and deliberate. Because stopping means giving up, and I'm not ready to do that yet. The morning brought visitors, Sam Preston from the feed store, along with Martha Chen, who ran the boarding house. They drove up in Sam's wagon, looking nervous. We can't stay long, Sam said, not even dismounting. But we brought supplies, food, ammunition, medicine. I told you I don't need, Mara started. It's not charity, Martha interrupted. It's investment. What you're doing here, standing up to the Rourkes, people are watching, talking. Some of us are tired of being afraid. Then help me fight. Sam's face fell. We can't. We have families, businesses. If we openly defy them, they'll burn you out, I know. Mara felt anger rising. So you'll give me bullets, but not bodies. That about right? It's more than anyone else is doing, Martha said sharply. Don't throw it back in our faces. She was right, and Mara knew it. I'm sorry. We know. Sam finally climbed down, started unloading supplies. For what it's worth, there are others who feel the same. If you can somehow pull this off, you won't be alone for long. And if I can't, then at least you went down fighting. That's more than the rest of us can say. They left quickly before anyone could see them. Mara watched them go, feeling the weight of expectation settle on her shoulders. It wasn't just about her land anymore. She was becoming something else. A symbol, maybe, or a cautionary tale. Don't let it get to you, Ronan said, reading her thoughts. You fight for yourself, not for them. Easy for you to say. No, it's not. He picked up a sack of flour. But it's true anyway. Over the next week, they transformed the ranch into a fortress. Ronan showed her how to reinforce the house walls with spare lumber, create firing ports, stock supplies in case of siege. They dug a second well inside the barn, hidden under hay. buried caches of food and ammunition at various points around the property. "You're preparing for war," Mara said, watching him sketch defensive positions. "I'm preparing for survival. There's a difference." "Is there?" Ronan looked up from his work. "War is offense. This is pure defense. We're not going after them." "Why not?" "You said you could have killed Gideon any time." "Killing one man won't solve anything. We need to break the whole gang, make them afraid." "How do you make monsters afraid?" "You become something worse." The way he said it made Mara shiver. She'd seen Ronan move, seen how calm he stayed under pressure. But there was something else underneath, a capacity for violence that ran deeper than skill, like he'd done terrible things and made peace with them. "Who are you really?" she asked. "Someone who's made a lot of mistakes." "That's not an answer." "It's the best one I've got." Training intensified. Ronan pushed her harder, demanding perfection in every drill. Reload faster, shoot straighter, move quieter. He taught her to fight dirty, eyes, throat, groin, taught her that honor gets you killed. "You're not trying to win," he said during a hand-to-hand session. "You're trying to survive long enough to get to a weapon." "What if there's no weapon?" "Then you make one. Rocks, sticks, dirt in the eyes, whatever works." Mara felt herself changing. The soft edges were wearing away, revealing something harder underneath. She stopped flinching at shadows, started sleeping with the rifle beside the bed instead of over the fireplace, ate standing up so she could move faster. "You're getting better," Ronan said one evening, watching her hit targets from 100 yards. "Better won't be enough." "Maybe not, but it's something." That night, more riders appeared in the tree line. 3 this time, spread out, watching. Ronan marked their positions, calculated angles. "They're mapping us," he said, "building a plan." "When do you think they'll come?" "Soon. Gideon's patient, but he's also proud. We embarrassed him. He'll want payback." So we wait. We wait. The waiting was its own kind of torture. Every sound could be an attack. Every quiet moment could be the calm before violence. Mara found herself getting angry at nothing, snapping at Ronan over trivial things. "I can't do this," she said after a particularly tense dinner. "Can't do what?" "This. Wait around to be killed. I feel like a rabbit in a trap." Ronan set down his coffee. "You want to run?" "No, I want to fight. Actually fight, not just prepare." "I told you." "I know what you told me, but I'm tired of being afraid, tired of hiding." She stood, pacing. "They killed my family, burned my home, and I'm supposed to just sit here and hope we get lucky?" "Hope's got nothing to do with it. This is about strategy." "Strategy's a luxury for people who aren't already dying inside." Ronan went very still. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "You think I don't know what it's like? Watching people you care about die while you do nothing?" "Then why are we doing nothing?" "Because rushing in angry gets you killed. Trust me, I've tried it." He stood, faced her. "I know you're hurting, know you want blood, but if you let rage make your decisions, you'll end up in the ground next to your family." Mara wanted to scream, to hit something, to burn the whole world down. Instead, she grabbed her coat and walked outside. The night was cold and clear, stars scattered across the sky like broken glass. She walked to the north ridge, to the spot where they'd buried the chickens. Stupid thing to cry over, but the tears came anyway. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered to the darkness. "I'm not strong enough." "Yes, you are." She spun around. Ronan stood a few feet away, having followed silently. "You don't know that," Mara said. "I do. I've watched you for 2 weeks, seen you push through pain, fear, exhaustion. You're stronger than you think. Or maybe I'm just too stubborn to quit." "That works too." He moved closer. "Listen, I've known a lot of fighters. Some were big, some were fast, some were mean. But the ones who survived weren't necessarily the strongest. They were the ones who refused to quit, who got knocked down and got back up. Every time. What if I can't get back up? Then I'll help you. That's why I'm here." Mara looked at him, really looked, saw past the scars and silence to something she hadn't expected, genuine concern. He actually cared whether she lived or died. "Why?" she asked. "You barely know me." Ronan was quiet for a long moment. "Because everyone I've ever cared about is dead, and I'm tired of adding names to that list." It was the most vulnerable thing he'd said. Mara felt something shift between them. Not romance, not yet, but connection, understanding. They were both carrying ghosts. "Who did you lose?" she asked gently. "Everyone. Family, friends. The woman I was going to marry." His voice was flat, emotionless. "Rourke gang hit the town where I was stationed. I was out on patrol. By the time I got back, it was ashes." "That's why you're hunting Gideon." "Part of it. The other part is nobody else will. The law out here is a joke. Sheriffs on the take, judges scared, federal marshals stretched too thin. Gangs like the Rourkes operate with impunity because nobody has the will to stop them. So you do it alone. Until now." He met her eyes. "You asked why I'm helping. This is why. Because maybe together we can do what I couldn't do alone. Break them. Completely." They stood in silence, two broken people bound by loss and rage, and something fragile that might have been hope. Above them, stars wheeled across infinite darkness. Below, the ranch waited, a trap set for monsters. "Tomorrow," Ronan said, "I want to teach you something else." "What?" "How to use fear. Turn it into a weapon." "I don't understand." "You will." They walked back together, shoulder to shoulder in the cold. Behind them, in the tree line, riders watched and waited. In town, Gideon Rourke studied maps and sharpened knives. And across the valley, settlers whispered about the widow who wouldn't kneel and the stranger who'd come to help her. The story was taking shape, spreading like wildfire. Some people called Mara crazy. Others called her brave. But everyone agreed on one thing. When the Rourkes finally came, it would be a fight worth remembering. Mara lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling. Ronan was right about the waiting being hard. But he was wrong about one thing. She wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. She was fighting for something bigger, the idea that good people could push back, that monsters could bleed. In the barn, Ronan cleaned his guns and thought about the federal warrant in his saddlebag. He'd been authorized to bring Gideon Rourke in alive for trial. But after seeing what the gang had done, after meeting Mara and hearing her story, he wondered if justice and law were the same thing. Sometimes they were. Sometimes they weren't. He finished with the guns and pulled out a small leather journal, its pages filled with names and dates. People the Rourkes had killed, towns they'd destroyed, crimes that would never see a courtroom. At the bottom of the list, he added two new names: Thomas Calloway, Daniel Calloway. Then he closed the journal and tried to sleep, knowing that soon, very soon, there would be a reckoning. And when it came, no one would walk away unchanged. The attack came at dawn on the 14th day. Mara was already awake, had been for hours, watching the sky turn from black to gray to that particular shade of orange that meant the sun was coming whether she was ready or not. She'd learned to hate mornings. They brought clarity she didn't want. Another day to survive, another stretch of hours waiting for violence. She was pouring coffee when Ronan appeared in the doorway, fully dressed, guns already strapped on. "They're coming," he said. Mara's hand didn't shake. That was progress, she supposed. "How many?" 14 riders, moving slow through the canyon. "Gideon?" "Leading them." She set down the coffee pot and picked up the Winchester. Her fingers found the familiar grooves in the stock, the worn spot where Thomas's hand had rested for 20 years. She'd hated this rifle once. Now it felt like the only honest thing in the world. "You remember the plan?" Ronan asked. "I remember. Don't try to be a hero. Just stay alive long enough for them to make mistakes." "And if they don't make mistakes?" Ronan checked his pistols one last time. "Everyone makes mistakes. The question is who pays for them." They moved into position. Mara took the house, second-floor window with clear sight lines to the eastern approach. Ronan disappeared into the rocks above the barn, vanishing so completely she lost track of him within seconds. The traps were set, the ammunition distributed, the escape routes memorized. Everything they could do, they'd done. Now came the part where they found out if it was enough. The riders appeared as the sun cleared the mountains. 14 men, just like Ronan said, spread out in a loose formation that spoke of experience. These weren't farm boys playing outlaw. These were killers who'd done this before. Gideon rode at the center, unmistakable even at distance. Big, confident, wearing a red shirt like he wanted to be seen, like he knew he was untouchable. Mara put him in her sights, finger resting lightly on the trigger. One shot. That's all it would take. End him now before he could hurt anyone else. But Ronan's words echoed in her head. Kill Gideon and his brothers would take over. Nothing would change except the face giving orders. They had to break the whole gang, make them afraid. Still, it was tempting. The riders reached the first trap, the wire strung across the ravine. Mara held her breath, waiting. The lead horse hit it at full gallop and went down hard, screaming, legs kicking. The rider flew forward, hit the ground with a crack she could hear from 200 yards away. Chaos erupted. Horses reared, men shouted, tried to control their mounts. 2 more horses went down before the rest pulled back, regrouping. Gideon was yelling orders, pointing. His men spread wider, approaching more carefully now. Smart. They'd learned. The second trap was a pit, hidden under branches and dirt. A horse's hoof punched through and the animal collapsed, dumping its rider. The man tried to stand and Ronan's rifle spoke from the rocks. The shot took him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He crawled for cover, leaving a blood trail in the dust. Now the Rourkes knew they were in a fight. Gideon called his men together, out of rifle range. Mara watched through the window, trying to read his body language. He was angry. She could see it in how he moved, sharp gestures, violent emphasis. But not panicked, not yet. Come on, she whispered. Get scared. Turn around. Leave. But they didn't leave. Instead, they split into 3 groups. One headed for the barn, one circled toward the house, and one, led by Gideon himself, stayed in the center, providing covering fire. Mara's heart hammered. This wasn't the plan. They were supposed to funnel through the traps, get picked off one by one. Not adapt. Not think. The group heading for the barn reached the 3rd trap, buried spikes hidden in tall grass. A horse screamed and reared, spike driven through its hoof. The rider bailed off, hit the ground running. Ronan shot him in the leg and he went down. But the others kept coming. Mara sighted on a rider approaching the house and squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked. The shot went wide. She cursed, worked the lever, fired again. This time she hit the horse. It stumbled, threw its rider, ran off bleeding. The rider came up shooting. Bullets punched through the window frame, spraying splinters. Mara dropped, crawled to a different window, came up firing. She didn't know if she hit anything. There was too much smoke, too much noise. This was nothing like practice. The targets moved wrong, shot back, didn't fall when you hit them. Her hands were shaking now, sweat running into her eyes. The rifle felt too heavy, too slow. A bullet smashed the window above her head. Glass rained down. Mara scrambled back, reloading by muscle memory, hands doing what her brain couldn't process. Another window shattered, then another. They were surrounding the house. Where was Ronan? As if answering, his rifle barked from a new position. One of the riders near the barn jerked and fell. Then another. He was moving between shots, never firing from the same spot twice, making them think there were multiple shooters. Mara forced herself to breathe, to think. She moved to the back window and saw 2 riders trying to flank the house. She fired, missed, fired again. One rider's horse stumbled, not hit, just spooked, and crashed into the other. Both men went down in a tangle of hooves and dust. She was working the lever when she heard the crash downstairs. Someone had made it to the house. Mara's blood went cold. The plan didn't account for this. They were supposed to stay outside where the traps could work, not inside, where it was just her and a rifle against men who'd spent their lives killing. She heard boots on the stairs. Heavy, deliberate. No rush. Whoever it was knew she was trapped up here. Mara backed toward the far corner, rifle aimed at the doorway. Her heart was trying to punch through her ribs. This was how she was going to die. In the house Thomas built, defending land that didn't matter anymore because everyone who made it home was already gone. The door kicked open. Cole Rourke stood there, the man Ronan had humiliated in the saloon. His face was twisted with rage and satisfaction. "Remember me?" he asked. Mara fired. The shot took him in the chest, punched him backward into the hall. He hit the wall and slid down, leaving a red smear. His eyes were wide, shocked, like he couldn't believe a woman had actually shot him. Mara lowered the rifle, hands shaking so hard she nearly dropped it. She'd killed a man, just pointed and fired and ended someone's life. Part of her waited to feel something, horror, regret, anything. But there was just emptiness and relief. Because he was dead and she wasn't. More footsteps. Multiple men this time. She'd made noise. drawn attention. They knew where she was now. Mara ran to the window, looked out. The yard was full of smoke and chaos, horses running loose, men taking cover, the barn partially on fire. How had the barn caught fire? She didn't know, couldn't process it. She had maybe 10 bullets left. 3 men were coming up the stairs. This was it. The explosion shook the house. Mara was thrown to the floor, ears ringing. Dust and debris rained from the ceiling. For a moment, she couldn't understand what had happened. Then she smelled it, burning oil. Ronan had set off one of the barrel traps. She crawled to the window and looked out. A massive crater had appeared in the yard, still burning. 2 riders lay motionless nearby, their horses gone. The others were scattered, confused, some retreating. The men on the stairs had stopped. She could hear them talking, arguing. The explosion had changed the equation. Mara used the moment. She grabbed the spare ammunition from under the bed and moved to a different room, one with a view of the back approach. 3 riders were regrouping there, and one of them was Gideon. She put the rifle to her shoulder and fired. The shot missed, but came close enough to make them scatter. She worked the lever, fired again, keeping them off balance. Not trying to hit anymore, just trying to make them think twice. Gideon looked up at the window. Even from here, she could see his face. He wasn't scared. He was furious. He pointed at the house and shouted something. 4 men broke from cover and charged. Mara fired until the Winchester clicked empty. She grabbed the pistol, Thomas's old Colt, 6 shots, and waited. The front door crashed open. Boots thundered through the house. She aimed at the doorway. A man appeared and she fired twice. He dropped. Another came and she fired again. Miss. Again. Hit. The man fell backward screaming. 2 shots left. The next man threw was smarter. He came low and fast, saw her, and fired first. The bullet passed so close to her head she felt the air move. She pulled the trigger and nothing happened. Misfire. The man grinned and raised his pistol. Ronan appeared behind him like a ghost and cut his throat. The man collapsed, gurgling, clutching his neck. Ronan stepped over him, blood on his knife, and grabbed Mara's arm. "We're leaving," he said. "The house is lost. Come on." He dragged her into the hall, down the stairs. The first floor was chaos. Overturned furniture, broken glass. Cole Rourke's body sprawled in the hallway. They made it to the kitchen before bullets started punching through the walls. Ronan kicked open the back door and they ran. The yard was a battlefield. Smoke everywhere, fires burning, wounded horses screaming. Mara couldn't see how many men were left. Too many. More than they could handle. Ronan pulled her toward the barn. They were halfway there when a rider appeared, cutting them off. Ronan shot him without breaking stride. The horse reared and ran off. They made it to the barn and Ronan slammed the door, dropped the bar. Immediately, bullets started hitting the wood, punching holes that let in shafts of light. "The tunnel," Ronan said. Now. They dug it 2 days ago, a narrow crawl space leading from the barn to a hidden position in the rocks. Escape route, last resort. Mara had hoped they'd never need it. She dropped into the hole and started crawling. The tunnel was barely wide enough, dirt walls pressing in from all sides. Behind her, she heard the barn door splinter, men shouting. Ronan fired twice, then dropped into the tunnel after her. "Go," he said. "Don't stop." Mara crawled. Her elbows scraped raw, her knees hit rocks, her lungs burned. The tunnel seemed to go on forever. Behind her, Ronan was breathing hard, moving fast. She heard more gunshots, muffled by earth and distance. Finally, light. The exit, hidden behind a boulder. Mara squeezed through and came up in the rocks above the ranch. Ronan emerged seconds later, covered in dirt, bleeding from a cut above his eye. They were on high ground now, looking down at the ranch. The barn was fully engulfed in flames. The house was still standing but surrounded. Riders everywhere, at least 10 that Mara could count. "We can't win this," she said. "No." Ronan reloaded his pistols. "But we can make them regret starting it." He stood and fired down at the riders. One fell, then another. The rest scattered, looking for cover, trying to locate where the shots came from. Mara found her rifle. She'd somehow held onto it through the tunnel and joined him. Together they poured fire into the chaos below. Not aimed shots anymore, just volume, making noise, creating fear. A rider broke from cover and galloped toward the rocks. Ronan shot the horse, and it went down, trapping the rider underneath. The man screamed until Mara's next shot silenced him, but they were running out of ammunition. Mara had maybe 4 bullets left. Ronan wasn't much better. Then the barn collapsed. The whole structure went down in a shower of sparks and burning timber. The noise was enormous, final. Mara watched it fall and felt something break inside her. That was Thomas's barn. His father's before that. 3 generations of work, gone in minutes. Mara, Ronan's voice was urgent. Look! The riders were pulling back, not retreating, but regrouping, and Gideon was riding forward, alone, holding a white cloth tied to a stick. He wants to talk, Ronan said. Or it's a trap. Probably both. They watched Gideon ride to the center of the yard and stop. He looked up at the rocks, searching. I know you can hear me, he called. So listen close. You fought well. Better than I expected. Killed 5 of my men. Wounded 3 more. That's impressive. He paused. Let that sink in. But it's over. You're out of traps, almost out of bullets, and you've got nowhere to run. So here's what I'm offering. Come down now, sign over the land, and you both walk away. I'll even give you money for travel. He's lying, Mara whispered. Of course he's lying. Ronan kept his eyes on Gideon. But he's also worried. We've hurt him worse than he expected. Gideon continued. You've got 1 minute to decide. After that, we burn everything, starting with the house. Let him burn it, Mara said. I don't care anymore. You should care. Because if we lose the house, we lose our defensive position. We'll be exposed up here. So what do we do? Ronan thought for a moment. We give him what he wants, sort of. Before Mara could ask what he meant, Ronan stood and called down, We'll talk, but not down there. You come up here, alone. Gideon laughed. You think I'm stupid? I think you're curious. You want to know who I am, why I'm helping her, and you won't get answers unless you come up here. Silence. Gideon was considering it. His men were watching, waiting. This was about pride now. If he refused, he'd look weak in front of them. All right, Gideon finally said, but if you shoot me, my boys burn everything and hunt you until you're dead. Fair enough. Gideon dismounted and started climbing. It took him a few minutes. The rocks were steep and he was a big man. When he reached the top, he was breathing hard, hand on his pistol. Ronan had his gun out too, aimed casually at Gideon's chest. Far enough, Ronan said. Gideon stopped. Up close, he was even bigger than Mara remembered. Broad shoulders, thick arms, a face that had seen violence and liked it. He looked at Ronan with open curiosity. I know you, Gideon said. Not your face, but the way you move. You're military. Was. And now you're what? Playing hero for a widow? Something like that. Gideon's eyes shifted to Mara. You've cost me a lot of money, Mrs. Calloway. Time, too. All for what? A piece of dirt? It's my dirt, Mara said. Not anymore. It's mine. Has been since your husband refused to pay. You murdered him. I removed an obstacle. Gideon said it casually, like commenting on weather. Nothing personal, just business. Mara raised her rifle, but Ronan put a hand on the barrel. Not yet, he said quietly. Why not? Mara's voice shook with rage. He just admitted it. He killed them. Because killing him now won't stop his brothers, won't stop the gang. Ronan looked at Gideon. Will it? Gideon smiled. You're smarter than you look. No, killing me just passes the torch. My brothers are meaner than I am. They'll burn this whole valley to ashes. Unless we give you a reason not to, Ronan said. And what reason would that be? Ronan reached into his coat slowly, keeping his gun trained on Gideon. He pulled out a folded paper and tossed it over. Gideon opened it, read, and his face went white. Federal warrant, Ronan said. Signed by a circuit judge in Denver. You're wanted for 47 counts of murder, robbery, arson, and conspiracy. There's a reward, $2,000, dead or alive. You're a marshal. Was. Now I'm something else. Gideon looked at the warrant, then at Ronan. This doesn't change anything. You can't take me alive. My men won't allow it. I don't need to take you alive, Ronan's voice went flat. The warrant says dead or alive. Your choice, which? If you kill me, you'll never make it off this mountain. Maybe, But you'll still be dead. They stared at each other, two men who'd lived with violence so long it had become their language. Mara watched them, feeling like she was witnessing something she couldn't fully understand. This wasn't just about the ranch anymore. This was something deeper, older. "What do you want?" Gideon finally asked. "Call off your men. Leave the valley. Don't come back. And in return, I let you ride away. Tell everyone this fight cost too much, wasn't worth it. Your reputation takes a hit, but you stay breathing. You'd let me go? After everything I've done?" "No." Ronan's finger tightened on the trigger. "But she might." All eyes turned to Mara. She looked at Gideon Rourke, the man who'd killed her husband and son, who'd burned her barn and destroyed her life, the man who deserved to die screaming. She could shoot him right now. One bullet, easy. But then what? His brothers would come. More killing, more fire, more graves. When would it end? "What guarantee do we have you'll actually leave?" Mara asked. "You don't," Gideon said honestly, "but I'm a practical man. This fight has cost me men and money. And now I know there's a federal warrant with my face on it. Staying in this valley means drawing attention I don't need. So you'll just move on to the next valley. Kill more people." "Probably." Gideon shrugged. "That's what we do." Mara felt rage building again. This man felt nothing, no remorse, no guilt. He was a monster wearing human skin. She put the rifle to her shoulder and sighted on his head. "Mara," Ronan said softly, "think about this." "I am thinking. I'm thinking he deserves to die." "He does. But killing him here, now, means war. His men are down there watching. They'll come for us and we don't have the ammunition to stop them." "I don't care." "Yes, you do. Because dying for revenge means they win. The ranch becomes theirs. Your death means nothing, and Gideon's brothers just keep going." Mara's hands shook. The rifle sight wavered. One squeeze. That's all it would take. But Ronan was right. Killing Gideon now would feel good for about 5 seconds. Then she'd be dead too. And what would that prove? She lowered the rifle. Gideon let out a breath he'd been holding. "Smart woman." "Shut up," Mara snapped. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call off your men and leave. And if I ever see you in this valley again, if I even hear your name, I'll hunt you down myself and put a bullet between your eyes. Understand?" Gideon studied her for a moment, then smiled. "You know what? I believe you." He turned to Ronan. "You've trained her well." "She didn't need much training, just permission." Gideon refolded the warrant and handed it back. "Keep it. I've got enough problems without adding federal marshals to the list." He started down the rocks, then paused. "For what it's worth, Mrs. Calloway, I'm sorry about your family. If I'd known you'd fight this hard, I'd have left them alone." "Get out of my sight," Mara said. Gideon climbed down and mounted his horse. He called to his men, gestured toward the canyon. They looked confused, angry, but they followed orders. Within minutes, the Rourke gang was riding away, leaving smoke and destruction behind them. Mara watched until they disappeared, then her legs gave out. She sat down hard, rifle falling from numb fingers. "We did it," she whispered. "They're gone." "For now," Ronan said. He was still watching the horizon, gun ready. "But this isn't over, not really." "What do you mean?" "I mean, Gideon will lick his wounds and come back. Maybe not here, but somewhere. He's not the type to quit." "Then what was the point?" Ronan finally holstered his gun and sat beside her. "The point is you're alive, the land is still yours, and we bought time to figure out the next move." "Next move?" Mara laughed bitterly. "Look at it. The barn's gone, the house is shot full of holes, the land's covered in bodies and blood. What's left to fight for?" "The fact that you're still here, that they didn't win." Ronan looked at her. "You stood up to them, Mara, made them bleed. Word of that will spread. Other people will find courage because of what you did." "I don't feel brave, I feel sick." "Good. That means you're still human." He stood, offered her a hand. "Come on, we need to check the house before dark." Mara let him pull her up. They climbed down from the rocks and walked through the battlefield. 5 bodies, just like Gideon said. Young men, most of them. Dead for money they'd never spend, following orders from a man who didn't care if they lived or died. Mara felt nothing looking at them. That scared her more than the fighting had. The house was damaged but standing, Bullet holes everywhere, windows broken, furniture destroyed. But the walls were solid, the roof intact. It could be fixed. The barn was a total loss. Nothing left but ash and twisted metal. Mara stood in the ruins and remembered helping Thomas build it, Daniel playing in the hayloft summer afternoons when everything felt safe and permanent. "I'm sorry," Ronan said. "It's just wood." It was more than that. Maybe once. Mara turned away. But now it's just another thing they took. They spent the rest of the day doing what needed to be done. Burying bodies, putting out fires, securing the house. Grim work made worse by exhaustion. By the time the sun set, Mara could barely stand. She made coffee, a luxury now that the barn and its supplies were gone, and they sat on the porch, not talking, just existing. "You saved my life," Mara finally said. "You saved mine too. In the house." "I shot a man. Cole Rourke, I saw the body." "I killed him." She needed to say it out loud, make it real. "I looked him in the eyes and pulled the trigger." "How do you feel?" "Empty." "Shouldn't I feel something? Guilt? Horror? Anything?" Ronan was quiet for a long moment. "The first man I killed, I threw up for an hour. Couldn't eat for days. Thought I'd broken something inside myself that couldn't be fixed." "What happened?" "Time passed. I killed more men. Eventually I stopped throwing up." He stared into his coffee. "Not sure if that's better or worse." "Do you regret it? The killing?" "Some of them. The ones who didn't deserve it, who were just in the wrong place. But men like Cole Rourke?" He shook his head. "No, the world's better without them." Mara thought about that. Cole had come into her house planning to kill her. She'd just been faster. "I don't regret it either," she realized. "That's what scares me." "It shouldn't. Regret means you enjoyed it." "You didn't enjoy it, did you?" "No." "Then you're fine. You did what you had to do and you're alive because of it. That's all that matters." They sat in silence as stars emerged. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. Life continuing, indifferent to human violence. "What now?" Mara asked. "Now you rebuild. Fix the house, get new livestock, plant for next season." "Alone?" Ronan looked at her. "I was planning to stay a while longer, if you want." "Why?" "Because Gideon's not the only problem. His brothers are still out there, and until that whole gang is broken, you're not safe. So you're staying to protect me." "I'm staying because I'm not finished yet." He stood, stretched. "But protecting you is part of it, yes." Mara wanted to argue, to say she didn't need protection, but the truth was, she did. Without Ronan, she'd be dead. The ranch would be Gideon's. Her family's graves would be forgotten. "All right," she said. "You can stay." "Generous of you, considering it's your land." "It is, isn't it?" Mara smiled for the first time in hours. "My land. Still mine." That night she slept in the house, rifle beside the bed, ears tuned to every sound. But no riders came. No fires started. For the first time since the barn burned, the ranch was quiet. In the ruins of the barn, Ronan stood watch, thinking about the conversation with Gideon. The warrant had worked better than he'd hoped, given them leverage. But it was a temporary solution. Gideon would regroup, come back with more men, and next time he'd be ready for traps and ambushes. Which meant Ronan needed to finish this before next time arrived. He pulled out his journal and studied the names. Gideon Rourke, Marcus Rourke, Jacob Rourke, 3 brothers, each worse than the last. Killing Gideon would just elevate Marcus. Killing Marcus would give Jacob control. He needed to take them all at once, break the gang completely. But how? He was one man. Even with Mara's help, they'd barely survived 14 riders. The full Rourke gang numbered over 30. The answer came to him slowly, piece by piece. He'd need help. Real help. Not just supplies and good wishes, but men willing to fight. And the only way to get that was to give them something worth fighting for. Hope. Proof that the Rourkes could be beaten. He looked back at the house, saw a lamplight in Mara's window. She was sitting up, probably unable to sleep after everything. He didn't blame her. His first real fight, he'd stayed awake for 3 days. She was stronger than she knew, tougher. And if he could keep her alive long enough, she might become the symbol this valley needed. The woman who stood against monsters and survived. But first he had to make sure she actually did survive. Ronan closed the journal and settled in for a long night of watching. Behind him, the ranch lay in ruins. Ahead, the future was uncertain. But for now, for tonight, they'd won. And sometimes winning meant just being alive to see another sunrise. The town heard about the battle before Mara and Ronan made it halfway down the main street. They'd ridden in 3 days after the fight, once the bodies were buried and the immediate damage assessed. Mara needed supplies: lumber, nails, glass for the windows, things she couldn't make herself. Ronan had argued against going so soon, said they should wait until things settled. But Mara was done waiting, done hiding. If the Rourkes wanted another fight, they'd get one. But she wasn't going to starve in the meantime. The stairs started at the edge of town. People stopped what they were doing, watched them pass. Whispers followed like dust kicked up by horses. By the time they reached the general store, a small crowd had gathered. Sam Preston came out onto the boardwalk, hat in his hands again. "Mara, Ronan, we heard what happened." "News travels fast," Mara said, dismounting. 5 dead Rourke men travels faster. Sam's voice was careful, neutral. "Is it true? You fought off the whole gang?" 14 riders, Ronan said. "Not the whole gang, but enough." The crowd murmured. Mara could see the mix of emotions: fear, awe, anger. She understood. They'd survived by keeping their heads down, and here she was, kicking the hornet's nest. "Gideon's going to come back," someone called from the crowd. A man Mara didn't recognize. "You know that, right? He's going to burn this whole town for what you did." "He won't," Ronan said. "How do you know?" "Because I gave him a reason not to." Ronan pulled out the federal warrant and held it up. The crowd pressed closer, reading. Mara watched their faces change as they understood what they were seeing. "You're a marshal?" Sam asked. "Was. The warrant's still good, though. So why didn't you arrest him?" The hostile man again. "Why let him ride away?" "Because arresting one man doesn't solve anything. The gang would have come for him, would have torn through this town to get him back. People would have died." "People died anyway," the man shot back. "Rourke people. There's a difference." The tension in the crowd shifted. Some people nodded, others looked away. Martha Chen pushed through to the front. "What you did," she said to Mara, "standing up to them like that. That took courage." "Or stupidity," Mara said. "Maybe both. But it's more than the rest of us have done." Martha glanced at the crowd. "We've been living under Gideon's boot for 3 years, paying, looking away, pretending, and you showed us it doesn't have to be like that." "I showed you it cost," Mara corrected. "My barn's gone. My house is shot full of holes. I killed a man." She said it loud enough for everyone to hear. "Cole Rourke. I shot him in my house and watched him die. That's what standing up costs." The crowd went quiet. Some people looked away, uncomfortable, but others met her eyes, something new in their expressions. Not pity. Understanding, maybe. Or respect. "We want to help," Sam said, "not just with supplies. Some of us have been talking. If the Rourkes come back, we don't want to just hide anymore." "You want to fight?" Ronan asked. "Some of us. Not all, but enough to make a difference." "Can you shoot?" Sam shifted his weight. "Well enough. Well enough gets you killed. Fighting's not like target practice. It's chaos and noise and people trying to kill you back." Ronan looked at the crowd. "How many of you have ever been in a real fight? Not a bar brawl, a fight where people are shooting to kill?" Silence. Then, from the back, a voice. "I have." An older man pushed through the crowd. Weathered face, missing 2 fingers on his left hand. He looked military, or former military. "Jack Torres," he said, extending his good hand to Ronan. "Served in the cavalry. Fought Comanche, outlaws, you name it." Ronan shook his hand, studying him. "Why are you here?" "Retired. Bought a small spread north of town. Been keeping my head down like everyone else." Jack glanced at Mara. "But what you did, ma'am, that reminded me what it felt like to stand for something." "I didn't do it for you," Mara said. "I did it because I didn't have a choice. Doesn't matter why. Matters that you did it." Jack looked at Ronan. "You're going after the rest of them, aren't you? The brothers." "That's the plan." "Then you'll need help. Real help. I can shoot, track, and I know tactics. He gestured to his missing fingers. Lost these in a fight, but I'm still here. That counts for something. Ronan considered this. You know what you're signing up for? I know the Rourkes need to be stopped, and I know 1 or 2 people can't do it alone. Jack turned to the crowd. But a dozen could. Maybe more. The murmuring started again. Mara could see people thinking, calculating risks. Some were already backing away, unwilling to commit. But others stood their ground. A young man stepped forward. I'll help. They burned my father's ranch 2 years ago. I want payback. This isn't about payback, Ronan said sharply. It's about justice. You want revenge? You'll get yourself killed and probably take others with you. The young man's face reddened. I know what you meant, and the answer is no. We don't need hotheads. The rejection stung. The young man slunk back into the crowd. But Ronan's bluntness had an effect. People who'd been considering volunteering thought twice, which was probably the point. Anyone else with real experience? Ronan asked. 2 more men stepped forward, both older, both with the look of men who'd seen violence. Ronan questioned them briefly, seemed satisfied. That's 4, counting me, Jack said. Not much, but it's a start. It'll have to do. Ronan turned to Sam. We'll need supplies, ammunition, medical supplies, food. Can you manage that quietly? I can try, but if Gideon has spies in town, he does. That's why we need to be careful. Ronan looked at Mara. You should stay here, at the boarding house. Safer than the ranch while we prepare. No. Mara, that's my land. I'm not abandoning it again. It's not abandoning. It's being smart. I've been smart. I've been careful. And it got my family killed. Mara's voice was hard. I'm going back to my ranch. You can come or not. They stared at each other. The crowd watched, sensing the tension. Finally, Ronan nodded. Fine, but we do this my way. No more improvising. Your way got us through the first fight. Barely. Mara didn't argue. He was right. They'd survived more through luck than skill. Next time they might not be so fortunate. They bought what they could. Lumber, nails, ammunition, basic supplies. Sam extended credit without being asked. Martha added food from her kitchen. Other townspeople contributed quietly, slipping items into their wagon when no one was looking. Small gestures, but meaningful. As they prepared to leave, an old woman approached. Mara recognized her, Mrs. Kerrigan, who'd lost her husband to the Rourkes the year before. I can't fight, she said softly. But I can pray for you. Mara almost said she didn't need prayers, but she saw the hope in the old woman's eyes, the need to contribute something, and couldn't bring herself to be cruel. Thank you, she said instead. They rode back in silence. The wagon was heavy with supplies, the day was hot, and Mara's mind wouldn't stop replaying the fight. The sound of Cole Rourke hitting the floor, the smell of burning wood, the weight of the rifle in her hands. You did good back there, Ronan said. Telling people I'm a killer? Telling them the truth. They needed to hear it. Needed to understand this isn't a game. Do you think they'll actually help when it comes down to it? Jack will. He's solid. The others, hard to say. People talk big until bullets start flying. They reached the ranch as the sun was setting. The burned barn looked worse in the orange light, like a skeleton. But the house stood, and that mattered. Mara had never been particularly attached to the building. It was just wood and nails. But now it felt like a monument, proof she was still here. They unloaded the wagon and got to work. Ronan showed her how to board up the broken windows properly, create firing ports, reinforce weak points. The house was becoming less of a home and more of a fortress. Mara wasn't sure how she felt about that. Tell me about the warrant, she said while they worked. How long have you been tracking Gideon? 2 years, give or take? That's a long time. He's careful. Moves around, never stays in one place long. By the time I'd reach a town, he'd already left. Ronan hammered a nail with more force than necessary. Lost his trail completely 6 months ago. Then I heard about Black Viper Ridge. The ranch is burning. Knew it was him. So you came here to finish it. I came here to end it. There's a difference. Not seeing it. Ronan set down the hammer. Finishing means killing him and moving on. Ending means making sure no one else picks up where he left off. That takes more than a bullet. Takes what? breaking the legend. These gangs, they run on fear and reputation. You prove they can be beaten, really beaten, and people stop being afraid, stop paying protection, stop looking away when they ride through town. And you think what happened here will do that? Maybe, if we tell it right. If enough people hear that a widow and a handful of defenders drove off the Rourke gang. He picked up the hammer again. Stories like that spread, give people courage. I'm not a hero, Ronan. Never said you were. Heroes are people in books. You're just someone who fought back. That's better. They worked until dark, then ate a cold dinner and sat on the porch. The night was clear, stars everywhere. In the distance, Mara could hear coyotes. The sound used to scare Daniel. He'd climb into bed with her and Thomas, convinced the coyotes were coming for him. She'd hold him until he fell asleep, whispering that everything was safe. Nothing was safe. She knew that now. Safety was an illusion people told themselves so they could sleep at night. What was her name? Mara asked suddenly. Ronan looked at her. Who? The woman you were going to marry. You mentioned her before. Sarah. He said it quietly, like the name hurt to speak. Sarah Monroe. What happened to her? The Rourkes happened. They hit the town where I was stationed, Fort Griffin, down in Texas. I was out on patrol when they came. By the time I got back, half the town was burning. Sarah was in the church. She'd gone there to help prepare for a wedding. Our wedding, actually, next month. Mara's chest tightened. I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry. Doesn't change anything. Ronan's voice was flat. They locked the church from outside and set it on fire. 23 people inside. Sarah, the reverend, kids who were supposed to be in the choir. I could hear them screaming while I tried to break down the door. That's why you hunt them. That's why I hunt them. He stood, walked to the edge of the porch. Federal marshal gave me the warrant 6 months later. Said if I could bring in the Rourke brothers, there'd be a reward and a full pardon. Pardon for what? For what I did to the men who helped them. The ones I caught before they could run. Ronan's shoulders were tight. Let's just say I didn't bring them in alive. Mara understood. She had felt that rage, that need to hurt the people who'd hurt her. The only difference was she hadn't had the chance to act on it. Yet. You think I should have killed Gideon, she said, when I had the chance. No, you made the right call. Hard call, but right. He turned to face her. Sarah would have done the same thing. She always said revenge was poison, that it ate you from inside until there was nothing left. Was she right? I don't know. I'm still here, still fighting, but I'm not sure what's left of the person I used to be. He sat back down. That's why I'm telling you this. So you know what you're getting into. This path, fighting the Rourkes, choosing violence, it changes you. And you don't get to go back. I don't want to go back, Mara said. The person I was before, she's dead. Died in that barn with her family. Maybe, or maybe you're just becoming who you needed to be all along. They sat in silence after that. Mara thought about Sarah Monroe, burned alive in a church, about Thomas and Daniel, trapped in a barn. Different people, same monsters. How many others had the Rourkes destroyed? How many lives ended so they could take what they wanted? The anger that had been building for weeks crystallized into something harder. Purpose, maybe. Or just acceptance that this was her life now, preparing for the next fight, hoping to survive long enough to see the one after that. Over the next 2 weeks, the ranch transformed. Jack Torres came out with the other volunteers, and they worked from dawn to dusk, building new defenses, training, planning. Jack was a good teacher, patient but firm. He showed them tactics Ronan hadn't covered, things learned from years of frontier warfare. The key, Jack said one afternoon, is making them think you're stronger than you are. Noise, movement, multiple firing positions. Make them think they're facing 20 men instead of 6. Will it work? Asked one of the volunteers, a farmer named Paul. Worked against the Comanche. Should work against outlaws. Jack demonstrated a flanking maneuver. The Rourkes rely on intimidation. They're used to people running. When you stand and fight, they get confused. That's when you hurt them. Mara watched the training from the porch, rifle across her lap. She'd participated earlier, but Jack had sent her to rest. Said she was pushing too hard, would burn out before the real fight came. He was probably right. She'd barely slept since the battle. Couldn't eat more than a few bites at a time. Her hands shook when she held coffee. But stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering, and she couldn't afford that. You need to talk about it, Ronan said, appearing beside her. About what? Killing Cole. It's eating at you. I'm fine. You're not. You're running on anger and fear, and that mix will burn you out. He sat down. I've seen it before. Soldiers who couldn't process what they'd done. Some of them made it through. Others didn't. What's the difference? The ones who made it talked about it. Got it out instead of letting it fester. Mara was quiet for a long moment. I see his face. When I close my eyes, the look he had when he realized I'd actually shot him, like he couldn't believe it. He underestimated you, probably thought you'd freeze. I almost did. My finger was on the trigger and my brain was screaming not to do it. Then I remembered Daniel. Her voice caught. My son, what they did to him, and I pulled the trigger. Do you regret it? No, that's what scares me. I should feel something, right? Guilt, remorse, anything. But I just feel... She searched for the word. Empty. That's normal. The guilt comes later if it comes at all. Ronan looked at her. You want my honest opinion? You did what you had to do. Cole Rourke came into your house planning to kill you. You defended yourself. End of story. Is it really that simple? It is and it isn't. Legally, you're clear. Morally, you're clear. But emotionally? He shrugged. That's something you work through over time. Or you don't. Either way, you keep moving forward. That night, Mara dreamed of the barn burning. But this time, when she ran inside, she found Cole Rourke standing in the flames, looking at her with those shocked eyes. He opened his mouth to speak, and fire poured out. She woke gasping, reaching for the rifle. The house was quiet. Outside, she could hear someone walking patrol. Jack, probably. The man barely slept. Mara got up and made coffee. It was 3 a.m, too early to start the day, but too late to try sleeping again. She sat at the kitchen table and watched the darkness outside slowly turn gray. Bad dreams? She jumped. Ronan stood in the doorway, fully dressed. Don't you ever sleep? She asked. Not much. Coffee? She poured him a cup and they sat in comfortable silence. Over the past weeks, this had become routine. 2 insomniacs sharing the quiet hours, not talking, just existing. Jack wants to move on the Rourkes, Ronan said eventually. Soon. How soon? Week, maybe 2. He's been scouting their camp. Thinks we have a window before they get reinforcements. You agree? Tactically, yes. Personally, I wish we had more time. More men. We work with what we have. That's what worries me. Ronan set down his cup. Jack's good, and the others are learning. But the Rourkes are 20, maybe 30 strong. We're 6. The math doesn't work. It didn't work last time either. We managed. We got lucky, and we were defending, not attacking. Offense is different, harder. Mara understood what he wasn't saying. Some of them wouldn't come back. Maybe all of them. So what do we do? She asked. We be smart. Hit them when they're vulnerable, make every shot count, and don't take unnecessary risks. He met her eyes. And we accept that this might not end the way we want. You mean we might die? I mean we probably will. But maybe we hurt them enough that someone else can finish it. It was honest, at least. Mara appreciated that. Better than false hope. When Jack wants to move, we move, she said. I'm tired of waiting. All right, I'll tell him. The decision, once made, brought unexpected relief. No more preparing, no more wondering. Just action. Mara threw herself into final preparations, checking weapons, gathering supplies. Ronan and Jack planned the attack, debating approach routes and fallback positions. 2 days before they were set to leave, a rider came to the ranch. A young boy, maybe 12, looking terrified. Message from town, he said, handing Ronan a folded paper. Man paid me $5 to deliver it. Said it was urgent. Ronan read the note, his face going hard. He handed it to Mara. Gideon Rourke is in Black Viper Ridge, asking for you by name. Mara's blood went cold. Why? Says he wants to talk, negotiate a permanent peace. It's a trap. Obviously. Ronan looked at the boy. Who gave you this message? Man at the saloon, didn't give his name, just paid me and said, deliver it fast. Ronan gave the boy another $1 and sent him away. Then he gathered everyone, Jack, the volunteers, Mara. Gideon's making a move, he said, trying to draw us out. Or he actually wants to talk, Jack suggested. After what happened, maybe he's reconsidering. Gideon Rourke doesn't reconsider. He plans. Ronan paced. This is a setup. He wants us in town, away from the ranch, in a place he controls. So we ignore it, Paul said. We can't. If we don't show, he'll think we're scared. Might hit the town out of spite. Ronan stopped pacing. We need to go, but on our terms. How? Mara asked. We split up. Jack takes half the men, secures positions around town. I take Mara into the saloon. If Gideon tries anything, Jack's people provide cover while we withdraw. That still puts you in danger, Jack said. Unavoidable. But it's better than letting Gideon dictate terms. They prepared quickly. Mara changed into clean clothes, strapped on Thomas's pistol. Ronan checked his weapons 3 times. Jack and the others left first, taking positions around Black Viper Ridge. An hour later, Mara and Ronan rode into town. The streets were empty. Too empty. Normal afternoon, there should have been people. Instead, nothing. Just wind and dust and locked doors. They've been warned, Ronan said quietly. Probably told to stay inside. So it is a trap. Definitely. They tied their horses and walked toward the saloon. Mara could feel eyes watching from windows, but nobody showed themselves. Her hand rested on the pistol grip, ready. The saloon doors swung open before they reached them. Gideon Rourke stood in the entrance, alone, hands visible. Mrs. Calloway, he said. Marshal, good of you to come. What do you want? Mara asked. Mara, sorry, to talk. Really talk. Not with guns drawn. He stepped aside, gesturing to the interior. I've got coffee. Fresh. And nobody's going to shoot anyone. You have my word. Your word, Ronan said flatly. I know, but I'm serious this time. Gideon's expression was hard to read. What happened at your ranch cost me more than just men. It cost me respect. Other towns are getting brave, refusing to pay. I'm bleeding money and manpower. Good, Mara said. For you, maybe. For me, it's a problem. He gestured again. Please, 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Mara looked at Ronan. He gave a tiny nod. They walked inside together, hands near weapons. The saloon was empty except for one table. 3 cups of coffee, still steaming. Gideon sat down and motioned for them to join him. Before we start, Ronan said, you should know we've got men positioned outside. Anything happens to us, they'll burn this place down with you inside. I figured as much. That's why I came alone. Gideon sipped his coffee. Here's my situation. The fight at your ranch showed people I'm not invincible. That's bad for business. But killing you now would just make you martyrs. Also bad for business. So what do you want? Mara asked. A deal. You leave this valley, I'll pay you double what the ranch is worth. You go somewhere else, start over, and I tell everyone you took the smart option. Everyone wins. Except you'd still be terrorizing other people. That's not your problem. It is now. Mara leaned forward. You killed my family. Burned my home. You think money fixes that? No, but it keeps you alive. Gideon's voice went cold. You're surviving on luck and the fact that I've been distracted. But my brothers are coming, Marcus and Jacob. They're meaner than me and they don't negotiate. When they get here, this whole valley burns. Let them come, Mara said. You don't mean that. Try me. Gideon studied her for a long moment. You've changed. You're harder than when we first met. You made me harder, maybe. But hard gets you killed in this business. Smart gets you old. He pushed a bank draft across the table. $10,000. More than you'd make off that land in 20 years. Take it and walk away. Mara looked at the draft. $10,000. A fortune. Enough to start over anywhere, live comfortably for years. She picked it up and tore it in half. I'm not leaving, she said. And when your brothers come, we'll be ready. Gideon's jaw tightened. You're a fool. Maybe. But I'm a fool with nothing left to lose. That makes me dangerous. It makes you dead. Then I'll die on my land, doing what's right. Gideon stood. I tried. Remember that when Marcus and Jacob are burning your house down around you. I gave you a chance. And I gave you one too, Ronan said. Told you to leave the valley. You're still here. This is my territory? Was, past tense. Ronan stood as well. New management's coming. You should leave before it arrives. They stared at each other. Then Gideon laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. You know what? I almost respect you two. Almost. He walked to the door, then turned. Marcus and Jacob will be here in 3 days. When they come, there won't be any deals. No mercy, just fire and blood. We'll be waiting, Mara said. Gideon left. Mara and Ronan sat in silence, listening to his horse ride away. Finally, Jack appeared in the doorway. Everyone still alive? He asked. For now, Ronan said. But we're out of time. The brothers are coming. How many days? 3, Jack swore. We're not ready. We'll have to be. They left the saloon and gathered the others. The townspeople were starting to emerge, watching warily. Sam Preston hurried over. What happened? Gideon tried to buy us out. We refused. Mara looked at the gathered crowd. His brothers are coming. 3 days. If you have families, I'd suggest getting them somewhere safe. The crowd erupted in panic. People rushing to wagons, shouting, trying to figure out where to go. Sam tried to calm them, but it was chaos. This is why I wanted to avoid town, Ronan muttered. Fear spreads faster than fire. They rode back to the ranch in silence. 3 days. Not nearly enough time to prepare, but enough time to make peace with what was coming. That night, Mara sat on the porch and thought about the bank draft. $10,000. A new life. Safety. Regretting it? Ronan asked. No? You? No? Why not? It was good money. Because running doesn't solve anything. They'd just find new victims. He sat beside her. Besides, I've run before. Didn't like it much. When was that? After Sarah died. I left Texas, headed west, tried to forget. Didn't work. Pain followed me. What changed? I realized I had 2 choices. Live with the pain and do nothing, or live with it and do something. I chose something. Mara understood. She'd been trying to choose nothing, hide at the ranch, mourn quietly, fade away. But that wasn't working either. The pain was still there, just as sharp. At least fighting gave it purpose. 3 days, she said. Think we can win? Honestly? No. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and Marcus Rourke has a reputation for brutality that makes Gideon look civilized. That's encouraging. But, Ronan continued, I've seen impossible odds before. Sometimes you win anyway. Sometimes just surviving is enough. And if we don't survive, then we make it cost them. Make it hurt so bad that whoever's left thinks twice before starting again. It wasn't a comforting answer, but it was honest. Mara looked at the ranch, the house they'd fortified, the land her family had built. She thought about Thomas and Daniel, about the life they'd had before the Rourkes came. She couldn't get that back, could never get it back, but she could make sure nobody else lost what she'd lost. All right, she said. Let's get ready. The 3 days passed like water through cupped hands, too fast to hold, impossible to stop. They used every hour. Jack drilled the volunteers until they could reload blindfolded, shoot from cover, move without exposing themselves. Ronan reinforced the house's weakest points and mapped escape routes through terrain most riders wouldn't risk. Mara divided her time between training and a task she'd been avoiding, writing letters to people she'd never met, just in case. What are those? Ronan asked on the second night, finding her at the kitchen table surrounded by paper. Instructions. For Sam, for Martha. What to do with the land if I don't make it? She folded another letter. Probably stupid. They'll just take it anyway. It's not stupid. It's preparation. Feels like giving up. It's the opposite. Giving up is not planning at all. He sat across from her. I wrote something too. Letter to the federal marshal in Denver. Details about the Rourkes, their operations, where they might run. If we fail, at least someone will know what we learned. Mara looked at him. Really looked. The scars, the tired eyes, the hands that had killed more men than she wanted to count. A broken man trying to fix a broken world. She'd hated him at first, resented his intrusion into her grief. Now she couldn't imagine facing this without him. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For staying. You could have killed Gideon that first night and collected your bounty. Could have left me to figure this out alone. Wouldn't have worked. Killing one man never does. Still, you stayed. That matters. Ronan was quiet for a moment. I stayed because I was tired of running, tired of watching people suffer because nobody had the courage to stand up. He met her eyes. You gave me a reason to stop running, so thank you too. They sat in silence after that, two people who'd found something unexpected in the ruins of their lives. Not romance exactly, though maybe that too eventually. More like understanding, recognition. They'd both lost everything and both refused to surrender. That created a bond deeper than words. The third day arrived with storm clouds building in the west. Appropriate, Mara thought. Even the weather knew something bad was coming. Jack gathered everyone for a final briefing. 6 defenders total: Mara, Ronan, Jack, Paul the farmer, and 2 others named Curtis and Tom. Not much against what was coming, but more than Mara had started with. Marcus Rourke doesn't do subtle, Jack said, sketching in the dirt. He'll come straight at us, overwhelming force, no tricks. Expects us to break and run. When we don't, that's when we'll have an advantage. How long can we hold? Curtis asked. He was young, early 20s, scared, but trying not to show it. Long as we need to. The goal isn't to kill them all, it's to hurt them bad enough they think twice about coming back. And if that doesn't work? Tom, older, a blacksmith with arms like tree trunks. Then we die well, Jack said simply. Make it mean something. Nobody argued. They all knew the odds. Some wars you fought to win, others you fought just to prove you wouldn't kneel. They took positions as the sun climbed toward noon. Mara in the house, 2nd floor, same window where she'd killed Cole. Ronan in the rocks above the barn's ruins. Jack and the others spread across strategic points, creating overlapping fields of fire. The waiting was worse than before. At least during the first fight there'd been surprise, adrenaline. Now there was just dread. Minutes stretching like hours, every sound a potential threat. Around 2 in the afternoon, Paul called out from his position. Riders, East Canyon, lot of them. Mara looked through the window and her stomach dropped. Not 14 this time, 25, maybe 30. They came in formation, disciplined, moving like a military unit. At the front rode a man even bigger than Gideon, wearing a long coat despite the heat. Marcus Rourke. Had to be. Beside him rode another man, leaner, but with eyes that looked dead even from a distance. Jacob. The brothers Gideon had warned them about. Here we go, Ronan said from his position. His voice was calm, but Mara heard the tension underneath. The riders stopped just outside rifle range. Marcus dismounted and walked forward alone, stopping where Gideon had stopped before. Mara Calloway, he called. His voice was deeper than Gideon's, rougher. My brother told me about you. Said you were too stubborn to accept a good deal. Mara didn't respond. Let him talk. I'm not like Gideon. I don't negotiate, don't make offers. You've got one chance. Walk out now with what you can carry, or we burn you out. Your choice. She's not leaving, Ronan called from the rocks. Neither am I. Neither are any of us. Marcus looked toward the voice, couldn't locate it. That you, Marshal. Gideon mentioned you too. Said you had some federal warrant, thought you were important. Important enough. Not to me. See, I've been running from the law my whole life. One more warrant doesn't change anything. Marcus gestured to his men. Last chance, come out or burn. Come and get us, Mara said. Marcus smiled. It was a terrible smile, empty of warmth or humanity. All right then. He walked back to his men, said something Mara couldn't hear. Then he mounted up and the whole gang started forward. Wait for it, Jack called. Let them hit the traps first. The first trap was the wire across the ravine, same as before. But the Rourkes had learned. A rider in front dismounted, found the wire, cut it. They moved through carefully, checking for other traps. They're not making the same mistakes, Paul said, voice tight with fear. Then we adapt, Ronan replied. Wait for my signal. The riders spread out, approaching from multiple angles. Smart, made them harder to concentrate fire on. They reached the second trap, the pit, and avoided it completely, having been warned by Gideon. Mara felt sweat running down her back. The plan had relied on the traps thinning their numbers. Without that advantage, they were just 6 people against 30. The riders reached optimal range and Ronan fired. A man fell from his saddle. Then Jack fired. Another man down. Then everyone was shooting and the world dissolved into noise and smoke. Mara aimed, fired, worked the lever, fired again. She couldn't tell if she was hitting anything. There was too much chaos, too many targets. Riders everywhere, shooting back, advancing. A bullet punched through the window frame next to her head. She ducked, relocated, came up firing. The Winchester felt alive in her hands, kicking with each shot. She'd loaded 20 rounds. Half were gone already. Outside, the Rourkes were using the barn ruins for cover, firing from behind burned timbers. Ronan was hitting them hard from the rocks, but there were too many. For every one that fell, 2 more took their place. "They're flanking," Curtis yelled. "South side." Mara ran to the south window. 5 riders were circling around, trying to hit them from behind. She fired, dropped one, but the others kept coming. Then Jack appeared, rifle barking, and 2 more went down. The remaining riders pulled back, regrouped. But it was just a matter of time. The Rourkes were testing defenses, probing for weaknesses. When they found one, they'd pour through. "We need to change the dynamic," Ronan called. "Jack, you ready?" "Ready!" Jack yelled back. Mara didn't know what they'd planned. Then Ronan threw something, a bottle with a rag stuffed in the top, burning. It arced through the air and smashed into the barn ruins, exploding into flame. The riders scattered as fire spread. Ronan threw another bottle, then another. Jack joined him. Soon the whole area around the barn was burning, forcing the Rourkes back. "Now!" Ronan shouted. He broke from cover and charged, not toward the Rourkes, but toward the house, using the flames as concealment. Jack and the others followed, abandoning their positions, consolidating at the house. They crashed through the door and Mara helped them barricade it. Now they were all together, safer from flanking but also trapped. "What's the plan?" she asked. "Survive until dark," Ronan said, reloading. "Then we slip out and hit them from behind." "That's a terrible plan." "It's the only one we've got." Outside, Marcus was shouting orders. The Rourkes regrouped, started a coordinated assault on the house. Bullets poured through windows, punched through walls. Mara and the others returned fire, but ammunition was running low. "I'm down to my last magazine," Curtis said. "Me too," Tom added. Ronan checked his pistols. "We've got maybe 10 minutes of sustained fire. After that, we switch to melee." "Against 30 men?" Paul's voice cracked. "We'll die, probably, but we'll take some of them with us." A bullet hit Tom in the shoulder. He screamed, fell back. Mara grabbed him, dragged him away from the window. Blood everywhere. She tried to stop it, but didn't know how. Tom was gasping, eyes wide with shock. "I'm hit," he kept saying. "I'm hit." "You're okay," Mara lied. "Just stay down." But he wasn't okay. She could see that. The wound was bad, bleeding too fast. Tom needed a doctor, needed help she couldn't provide. Curtis took a bullet next, through the leg. He went down hard, cursing. Paul tried to help him and took a round through his hand. Now half their force was wounded. "We're losing," Jack said, stating the obvious. "We need a miracle." The miracle came from an unexpected direction. Gunfire erupted from the east, not from the house, but from behind the Rourkes. Mara risked a look and saw riders, at least a dozen, attacking the gang's rear. "Who the hell is that?" Ronan said. Through the smoke, Mara recognized faces. Sam Preston, Martha Chen, other townspeople armed and fighting. They'd come. Actually come. The Rourkes were caught between 2 forces now, confused, disorganized. Marcus tried to rally them, but his voice was lost in the chaos. Men were falling, horses running loose. The careful assault turned into a brawl. "Now's our chance," Ronan said. "Everyone who can fight, on me." He kicked open the door and charged out. Mara followed, rifle empty, pulling Thomas's pistol. Jack was beside her, Curtis limping behind despite his wound. The yard was a battlefield. Bodies everywhere, wounded men crawling, fires burning. Mara fired at a rider and he fell. Fired again, missed. A man came at her with a knife and Jack shot him. In the center of it all, Marcus Rourke was fighting like a demon. He'd dismounted, was using a rifle like a club, breaking heads. 3 townspeople lay around him, not moving. Ronan went straight for him. They collided like storms, rifle against rifle, neither giving ground. Marcus was bigger, stronger, but Ronan was faster. They traded blows, circled, looking for openings. Mara started toward them, but a rider cut her off. Jacob Rourke, the dead-eyed brother. He drew his pistol and aimed at her head. "You're the widow," he said. "The one who started all this." Mara raised her empty pistol, knowing it wouldn't help. Jacob smiled and pulled the trigger. The gun clicked. Empty. Before he could react, Mara charged. She hit him with everything she had, years of grief and rage compressed into one moment. They went down together, rolling in the dirt. Jacob was bigger, but Mara fought dirty, clawed at his eyes, bit his hand when he tried to choke her. Someone pulled her off. She came up swinging and found Sam Preston. "We got him," Sam said. Jacob was on the ground, 3 townspeople holding him down. Mara looked around. The fight was ending. The Rourkes were breaking, running, those who could. Bodies everywhere, some in Rourke colors, some townspeople. Too many. And in the center, Ronan and Marcus still fought. Marcus had lost his rifle, pulled a knife. He slashed at Ronan, caught him across the ribs. Ronan grunted, stepped back, then drove forward with his own knife. They grappled, both bleeding, neither willing to quit. Then Ronan got behind Marcus, locked his arm around the bigger man's throat, and squeezed. Marcus thrashed, trying to break free, but Ronan held on, applying pressure, cutting off air. Finally, Marcus went limp. Ronan held him a moment longer to be sure, then let him drop. The yard went quiet except for moaning wounded and crackling fires. Mara walked to Ronan. He was bleeding from multiple wounds, barely standing. She caught him before he fell. "Is it over?" she asked. "Yeah." He coughed, winced. "It's over." They'd won. Somehow, impossibly, they'd won. The aftermath was brutal. 8 townspeople dead, 12 wounded. Of the Rourkes, 15 killed, 7 captured, including Marcus and Jacob. The rest had fled. They laid out the dead in rows. Mara walked among them, looking at faces. People she'd known, people who'd come to fight despite their fear. Sam Preston's son, barely 18, Martha Chen's nephew, others she recognized from town. "They came," she said to Jack. "I didn't think they would." "You inspired them." Jack was wrapping his own wounds, refused help, showed them it was possible to fight back. Sometimes that's all people need, someone to go first. It costs them. Freedom always costs. Question is whether it's worth the price. Mara didn't have an answer for that. She moved through the wounded, helping where she could. Tom the blacksmith had died while they fought. Curtis would lose his leg. Paul would recover, but his hand was ruined. And Ronan had taken a knife to the ribs, bullets to his shoulder and thigh. He was alive but barely, fading in and out of consciousness while Martha worked on him. "Will he make it?" Mara asked. "Maybe, if infection doesn't set in." Martha tied off a bandage. "He needs rest, time to heal, and luck." Mara sat beside him, took his hand. His eyes opened briefly. "We did it," he whispered. "We did." "The brothers?" "Marcus unconscious, Jacob captured. It's over." Ronan smiled weakly. "Good. That's good." His eyes closed again. "Don't you dare die on me," Mara said fiercely. "Not after everything." "Wasn't planning on it." But he looked bad. They all did. Exhausted, broken, holding together through will alone. The federal marshal arrived 2 days later following rumors of a major battle. He took custody of Marcus and Jacob Rourke, along with the other prisoners. Looked at the warrant Ronan had carried, looked at the carnage, and shook his head. "You people are either very brave or very stupid," he said. "Bit of both," Jack replied. The marshal interviewed everyone, wrote pages of notes. He confirmed Ronan's identity as a former federal operative, said there'd be a reward for the Rourke brothers' capture, $5,000, split among the survivors. "What about the rest of the gang?" Mara asked. "The ones who escaped?" "We'll hunt them. With the leaders gone, they'll scatter, try to blend in. Some we'll catch, some we won't." The marshal closed his notebook. "But the Rourke gang as an organization? That's finished. You broke them." After he left, taking the prisoners, the valley began to heal, slowly, painfully, like a bone poorly set. The townspeople returned to Black Viper Ridge, started rebuilding. Families came back, stores reopened. There were funerals, too many funerals. But there was also something new. People walked straighter, met each other's eyes. The fear that had ruled for 3 years was gone. Mara spent weeks nursing Ronan back to health. He developed fever, nearly died twice. But he was stubborn, refused to quit. Eventually, the fever broke and he started recovering. "You're a terrible patient," Mara told him one morning, watching him try to stand too soon. "I've been told that before." He grimaced, sat back down. "How's the ranch?" "Coming together. Sam's been organizing work crews, new barns half built." "You're rebuilding." "What else am I going to do?" "It's my land." Ronan looked at her for a long moment. "You've changed from that first day when I showed up." "So have you. Maybe. Or maybe we just became who we needed to be." As spring arrived, the ranch transformed. The new barn rose where the old one had burned. Mara planted crops, bought new livestock with her share of the reward money. The land that had been a battlefield slowly became a farm again. Other changes came too. Jack Torres bought the property adjacent to Mara's, started his own spread. Curtis, despite losing his leg, opened a gunsmith shop in town. Paul took over the feed store when Sam retired. And the stories spread. The widow who'd fought the Rourke gang, the marshal who'd given everything to stop them, the townspeople who'd found courage. Other settlements heard and started standing up to their own oppressors. The change was slow but real. 6 months after the final battle, Ronan was healed enough to travel. Mara found him packing his saddlebags one morning. "You're leaving," she said. It wasn't a question. The federal marshal offered me a job, tracking down the remaining Rourkes, other gangs like them. "It's what I do." "You could stay here, help run the ranch." "I'm not a farmer, Mara." "I know, but you could be." Ronan stopped packing, turned to face her. "I've spent 10 years hunting bad men. It's all I know how to do anymore. If I stay, I'll just be waiting for the next fight. You deserve better than that." "Let me decide what I deserve." They stared at each other. 6 months of living together, fighting together, surviving together. It had created something neither could quite name: partnership, friendship, maybe love. But love wasn't always enough. "Come with me," Ronan said suddenly. "What?" "Come with me. We'll hunt them together, clean up the territories. You're good in a fight, and you understand what's at stake." Mara was tempted. The idea of more action, more purpose, appealed to something that had awakened in her. But she looked at the ranch, the land Thomas had loved, and shook her head. "This is my home. My fight is here, rebuilding, making sure what we did matters." She touched his face. "Your fight is out there. We both know it." Ronan closed his eyes, leaned into her touch. "I don't want to lose you. You're not losing me. You're just going where you need to go. Will you be here when I come back?" "If you come back." "When?" he insisted. "All right, when?" He left the next morning. Mara watched him ride away, carrying his guns and his ghosts. Part of her wanted to call him back, make him stay, but she understood. Some people were built for homesteading, others were built for war. Ronan was the latter, and trying to change that would destroy him. The weeks became months. Mara threw herself into the ranch, working until exhaustion made her sleep. The land prospered, crops grew, cattle multiplied. She hired help, young men from town who needed work, families who wanted fresh starts. The ranch became more than just hers. It became a symbol, a place where people could rebuild after tragedy. She took in a widow whose husband had died fighting the Rourkes, then a family whose farm had been burned by another gang. Soon the ranch was its own small community. Winter came and went, spring returned. Mara was in the north field, supervising planting, when she saw the rider. Even from a distance she knew, the way he sat his horse, the careful scan of the horizon. Ronan was back. She walked to meet him, not running but not slow either. He dismounted and they stood facing each other. "You came back," she said. "I said I would." "How long are you staying?" "Depends." He looked tired, older. "I've been thinking, all that time out there, hunting, and I realized something." "What?" "I'm tired of hunting, tired of killing, tired of everything that comes with it." He took her hands. "You were right. I could be a farmer, if you're still willing to teach me." Mara felt something break open in her chest. Hope? Maybe? Or just relief that she didn't have to carry everything alone anymore. "The work's hard," she warned. "So was everything else. You'll probably hate it. Probably. But I'll hate it with you, so that's better." She laughed, surprising herself. When was the last time she'd laughed? She couldn't remember. All right then, she said. Welcome home. They walked back to the ranch together, two broken people who'd found something worth building in the ruins of everything they'd lost. It wasn't the life either had imagined. It wasn't perfect or easy or without scars. But it was theirs. Years later, when people asked Mara about the Rourke gang, about the battles and the blood, she'd tell them the truth. That violence had solved nothing. That every victory came at a cost almost too high to bear. That she'd killed men and would carry that weight forever. But she'd also tell them this. Sometimes you had to stand up, even when you knew you'd lose. Sometimes making a stand mattered more than the outcome. Not because it changed the world overnight, but because it showed others that change was possible. The ranch became known across the territories, not as a battlefield, but as a place where people rebuilt, where widows and orphans and anyone broken by violence could find solid ground again. Ronan learned to farm, though he was never very good at it. He was better at teaching young men how to defend themselves, how to stand up to bullies and gangs. He trained them not for revenge, but for protection, making sure what happened to Mara's family didn't happen to others. They never married. Both had been married before, and both had lost those partners to violence. The formality seemed unnecessary. They were partners in everything that mattered: work, life, survival. On quiet evenings, they'd sit on the porch where everything had started. Sometimes they talked about the past, the people they'd lost, the fights they'd survived. Other times, they just sat in silence, watching the sun set over land they'd defended with blood. "Do you regret it?" Ronan asked one such evening. "Everything that happened?" Mara thought about Thomas and Daniel, about Cole Rourke dying on her floor, about the 8 townspeople who'd fallen in the final battle. So much pain, so much loss. "I regret that it was necessary," she said, "but I don't regret fighting. The world needs people willing to stand up." "Even when it costs everything?" "Especially then." They sat in silence after that, watching darkness creep across the valley. Somewhere in town, children were playing. Families were having dinner. People were living lives free from fear because other people had been willing to pay the price for that freedom. It wasn't fair. It wasn't right. But it was real. And in a world that had taken so much from both of them, that reality, imperfect and hard-won, was enough. The ranch stood for another 40 years. Long after Mara and Ronan were gone, it remained a symbol. The place where a widow had said no to monsters, where ordinary people had found extraordinary courage, where love and purpose had grown from ashes. Some stories end with triumph, others with tragedy. This one ended with something more valuable than either: hope that even in the darkest times, even against impossible odds, good people fighting for good reasons could make a difference. It wasn't much, but sometimes it was enough.